Kaelen Drax never believed in fate, but the moment he would awaken a girl capable of bending reality itself, he started to suspect the universe had a cruel sense of humor. But that moment hadn't come yet. Right now, fate looked a lot like stale recycled air, a half-empty mug of synthetic coffee, and the endless graveyard of dead ships stretching beyond his viewport. The nebulous graveyard where dreams, debts, and derelicts came to die. Kaelen leaned back in the pilot's chair of the Starhound, his boots propped lazily against the console, watching the drifting carcasses of forgotten vessels. Some were ancient warships, their hulls scarred by battles no one remembered. Others were merchant freighters, hollowed out and picked clean by scavengers like himself. "You know," chimed a voice from the console, smooth and laced with perpetual sarcasm, "most people avoid cursed sectors. But not you, Captain Drax. You see a cosmic tomb and think, ah, perfect place for a stroll." Kaelen smirked without looking at the ship's AI interface. "Lux, if I wanted life advice, I wouldn't ask a program installed with exactly zero optimism." "Correction," Lux replied, "I was installed with realism. It's not my fault reality happens to be bleak." Kaelen took a sip from his mug and grimaced. "Cold. Again. Just like everything else in his life." He scanned the radar lazily, more out of habit than hope. Credits were scarce, enemies plentiful, and his last job had ended with a bounty on his head thanks to a double-crossing client. Hiding in a stellar graveyard wasn't smart, but it was all he had. Then, the screen flickered. A pulse? Faint. Unregistered. A signal that didn't belong to any known beacon. Kaelen straightened, frowning. "Lux, confirm that blip." "Already on it," the AI responded, voice shifting from playful to professional. "It's odd. No standard frequencies. No distress code. The signal's coming from grid sector Theta 9. Kaelen's eyes narrowed as he brought up the sector map. Theta 9 was deep within the densest part of the graveyard where even scavengers didn't dare venture. Too easy to get lost. Too many ships tangled together like cosmic wreckage. "Tell me it's not a trap," Kaelen muttered. "If it is, it's a very old one," Lux said. "The signal is coming from a vessel that predates current galactic registries. Design matches nothing in human archives." That piqued Kaelen's interest and his survival instincts. Ancient ships meant two things: danger, and priceless tech. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the thruster controls. Common sense screamed at him to leave it alone. But common sense didn't pay docking fees or erase debts. "Plot a course," he said finally. Embracing bad decisions as usual," Lux quipped, but coordinates began to populate the screen. As the Starhound weaved through the skeletal remains of forgotten vessels, Kaelen felt that familiar tension coil in his chest. The kind that whispered he was either about to get rich or get dead. Minutes later, it emerged from the shadows. A massive, jagged silhouette unlike any ship Kaelen had ever seen. Its hull wasn't metal in the traditional sense, it shimmered with an organic sheen, as if grown rather than built. Strange glyphs pulsed faintly along its surface, alive with a rhythm that didn't match any known language. Kaelen let out a low whistle. "Now that's unsettling." "Understatement of the year," Lux replied. "No heat signatures. No power readings aside from the signal. It's a ghost. Kaelen engaged the docking protocols, his heart thudding a little faster. Ghosts don't send invitations. Maybe this one's just lonely, Lux offered dryly. As the docking clamps locked onto a protrusion of the alien hull, Kaelen stood and grabbed his jacket, the weight of his sidearm a small comfort. He paused at the airlock, glancing back at the console. Keep comms open. If I'm not back in an hour, I'll sell what's left of your stuff and pretend we never met, Lux finished cheerfully. Kaelen snorted. Glad to know I'm in good hands. The airlock hissed open, and a wave of cold unlike anything artificial greeted him. It wasn't just temperature, it was the kind of cold that seeped into bones, whispering of centuries without life. His boots echoed against the strange, dark material of the corridor as he stepped inside. The walls shimmered faintly, responding to his presence with an almost imperceptible pulse, like the ship itself was aware. Kaelen swallowed hard, the bravado fading as the oppressive silence pressed in. Lux, he whispered, his voice sounding too loud in the suffocating stillness, you still with me? Unfortunately, came the reply, though softer now. I don't like this, Kaelen. Even by your suicidal standards. Yeah, Kaelen muttered, eyes scanning the alien script that lined the walls. Join the club. Every step deeper felt like trespassing in a forgotten temple, where even time had given up keeping count. He wasn't sure what he was looking for: tech, artifacts, anything that could prove this wasn't just another dead end. But beneath the scavenger's instinct, something else gnawed at him. A feeling. Like he was being watched. Not by cameras. Not by machines. By the ship itself. Kaelen exhaled slowly, forcing down the rising unease. Whatever lay at the heart of this vessel, he told himself, was just salvage waiting to happen. But deep down, a voice, one not belonging to Lux, whispered a single truth. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. The deeper Kaelen Drax ventured, the more the alien vessel felt less like a ship and more like a mausoleum carved from forgotten dreams. The walls pulsed faintly with that eerie bioluminescence, casting ghostly patterns across his face as he moved through the winding corridors. His breath echoed in his helmet, each step a reluctant drum beat in the oppressive silence. Then he saw it. A chamber opened before him, vast, circular, and impossibly quiet. The ceiling was lost in darkness, but in the center, suspended by cables of light and strands of unknown material, hovered a structure that sent a chill deeper than space itself through his spine. A stasis pod. But not like any stasis pod Kaelen had ever seen. This wasn't built for function. It was art, no, reverence. The pod shimmered like liquid crystal, shifting colors with every angle, humming a tune too soft for ears but loud enough for the soul. And inside it, was her. Kaelen's breath caught. She looked human almost. But no human had skin like molten silver kissed by starlight, or hair that drifted around her head like strands of the cosmos itself, dark with flecks of shimmering blue. Her ears were long, elegant, swept back like the wings of a resting bird. Eyes closed, face serene, she floated in suspended animation, beautiful and untouchable, like a goddess lost in time. Lux, Kaelen whispered, barely trusting his own voice. You seeing this? I see it, the AI replied, uncharacteristically subdued. And for once, I have no witty remarks. Kaelen stepped closer, drawn in by something he couldn't name. The glyphs along the pod's surface glowed brighter as he approached, reacting to his presence. He shouldn't touch it. Every survival instinct screamed at him to back away, to turn around and forget he ever saw this. But his hand moved on its own. Fingers brushed against the surface, warm, almost like skin. A spark of energy danced up his arm, making his heart skip a beat. The pod responded with a soft hiss, and before Kaelen could react, fractures of light raced across its surface. The hum deepened, resonating in his bones. Her eyes opened. Violet. Deep, endless, like galaxies weeping in silence. She looked directly at him, not around, not in confusion but at him, as if she had been waiting for this precise moment. Her lips parted, voice raw and ancient. Finally, someone who sees me? Kaelen's mouth went dry. Hi. Before either could process more, Lux's voice snapped back to life, sharp and urgent. Kaelen, we have a problem. 3 ships just dropped out of stealth, locking weapons on the Starhound. Of course they are, Kaelen muttered, heart racing. The woman, no, the alien stirred weakly, her limbs adjusting to gravity she hadn't felt in who knew how long. She faltered, and Kaelen instinctively caught her before she could collapse. Her skin was cool, smooth like polished metal, but undeniably alive. Who are you? He asked, half carrying her. Elyndra, she whispered, as if the name itself was a secret too heavy for the air. The chamber shuddered, the first sign that the ancient ship wasn't as dead as it seemed. Kaelen. Shields are dropping fast. If you want to live, now's the time to run, Lux barked. Kaelen didn't hesitate. Logic had left the building the moment Elyndra opened her eyes. Whatever she was, whoever she was, it didn't matter. Leaving her behind wasn't an option. Come on, he urged, supporting her weight as they stumbled back through the corridor. The ship's walls pulsed violently now, as if protesting her release. They found me, Elyndra murmured, her voice tinged with sorrow and a flicker of something else. Hope? Yeah, well, they found me too, Kaelen panted. Seems we're both popular. The airlock loomed ahead, the Starhound gleaming faintly beyond, its systems already primed for a quick getaway. As they crossed the threshold, Lux sealed the docking clamps with a hiss of escaping pressure. Get us out of here? Kaelen shouted, dropping into the pilot seat, Elyndra collapsing into the co-pilot chair, her gaze fixed on the viewport where shadows of the enemy ships circled like vultures. Engines hot, Lux confirmed. But they're faster, Kaelen. We won't outrun them in open space. Kaelen's eyes darted across the controls. Then we don't give them open space. Dive into the debris field. Brilliant, Lux groaned. Nothing says survival like threading a needle through a minefield. As the Starhound lurched forward, Kaelen risked a glance at Elyndra. She was watching him not with fear, but with a quiet intensity, as if measuring the man who, for reasons beyond understanding, chose to save her. Why? She asked softly over the hum of the engines. Kaelen gave a breathless, crooked grin. Honestly? I didn't think about it. For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips, fragile, but real. Outside, plasma fire lit up the darkness as the hunt began, And somewhere between instinct and impulse, a bond was forged not by destiny, but by a reckless choice to care when it made no sense at all. Kaelen Drax had no idea what Elyndra truly was. But he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let her be alone again. Plasma fire sliced past the hull of the Starhound, lighting up the cockpit in sickly flashes of green. Kaelen Drax gritted his teeth, yanking the controls hard to port as a chunk of ancient debris spun dangerously close. "Lux, status," he barked, sweat beading on his brow despite the cold. "Status? We're seconds from becoming space dust," Lux replied, voice calm in that infuriatingly sarcastic way. "But hey, at least you'll go out with style." The ship shuddered as another blast grazed the aft shields. Warning lights screamed across the dashboard. Kaelen forced a grin, masking the tight coil of fear in his gut. "I've always wanted to be a shooting star." "Careful what you wished for," Lux muttered. Outside, the 3 hunter ships closed in sleek, black vessels that seemed to flicker in and out of visibility, their forms bending light like shadows given purpose. Predators of the void. Kaelen's fingers danced over the controls, guiding the Starhound into the densest part of the debris field. Jagged remnants of forgotten wars and derelict stations loomed around them, turning space into a labyrinth of death. "You're insane," Lux added helpfully. "We've established that," Kaelen shot back, narrowly dodging a rusted-out freighter hull. A low hum beside him made him glance at Elyndra. She sat rigid in the co-pilot seat, her violet eyes glowing faintly, hands gripping the armrests. The air around her shimmered subtle, but unmistakable. "Elyndra. They will not let us go," she whispered, voice laced with both certainty and regret. Before Kaelen could reply, one of the hunter ships surged forward, its cannons charging. A pulse of energy rippled from Elyndra, barely visible, like a heat wave through reality itself. The incoming plasma bolt twisted mid-flight, curving unnaturally before dissipating harmlessly into the void. Kaelen's eyes widened. "Did you just bend that shot?" Elyndra's face was pale, well, paler than her usual silver glow. She nodded once, but her body swayed with exhaustion. "I can nudge the threads," she murmured. "But not for long." "Right," Kaelen muttered, refocusing on the maze ahead. "No pressure, then." The Starhound spun through a collapsing satellite array, metal shards scraping against the shields. Behind them, the hunters adapted, weaving through the wreckage with predatory grace. "We're not losing them," Lux warned. "And the shields won't hold much longer?" Kaelen's mind raced. "Options? None. Miracles? Already used." His gaze flicked to the NAV map and then, an idea. A terrible, desperate idea. "Lux, set course for Harkon's Edge. You want to hide in a gravity well surrounded by electromagnetic storms? That's your plan?" "No," Kaelen grinned tightly. "We're going to Dad's house." Elyndra stirred, her tired eyes narrowing. "Your father? Ex-military? Paranoid? Lives in a fortress built for planetary sieges," Kaelen explained between sharp turns. "If anyone can keep us breathing, it's him." Lux sighed through the speakers. "Remind me to update your psychological profile under suicidal family visits." The Starhound burst out of the debris field, engines screaming as Kaelen pushed the thrusters to their limit. The hunters followed, but the open space gave him just enough room to angle toward the swirling storms of Harkon's edge. Lightning arced across the atmosphere below, a chaotic dance of energy that could fry a ship's systems in seconds. "We won't survive entry," Lux warned. "We don't have to survive pretty," Kaelen shot back. "Just enough to crash politely on his doorstep." As they pierced the storm front, turbulence rocked the ship violently. Panels sparked, alarms blared, and Lux listed off a growing number of system failures with dry amusement. Elyndra clenched her jaw, her hands trembling as another hunter shot fired a blast that should have ended them. But again, reality bent. The beam scattered harmlessly, though Elyndra slumped in her seat, breath shallow. "Stop that," Kaelen growled, sparing her a glance. "You're going to burn yourself out." "Better than dying," she whispered, but her strength was fading fast. Through sheer stubbornness and suicidal piloting, the Starhound broke through the worst of the storm, its hull scorched but intact. Below, nestled within jagged cliffs and shielded by natural canyons, stood the dark silhouette of a fortress, turrets already swiveling to lock onto them. "Incoming transmission," Lux announced. "Guess who's not happy to see you?" Kaelen smirked despite the chaos. "Yeah, well, he's about to have company." As the Starhound made its final descent, Kaelen glanced once more at Elyndra. She met his gaze, guilt flickering behind her tired eyes. "I didn't mean to drag you into this," she said softly. Kaelen's grin was lopsided, masking the adrenaline and fear coursing through him. "Story of my life, Elyndra. If I had a credit for every time I got pulled into someone else's mess." The ship slammed onto the landing pad with all the grace of a falling asteroid. Systems failed. Lights flickered. But they were alive. "Welcome to the family," Kaelen muttered, unstrapping himself as the fortress defenses powered up around them. Outside, the storm raged on, but for now, they had a chance. And Kaelen Drax wasn't about to waste it. Kaelen Drax stepped off the Starhound into the biting wind of Harkon's edge. Lightning split the sky above, illuminating the angular cliffs and the looming silhouette of the fortress that had haunted his childhood. The air smelled of scorched metal and ozone. It felt like war. A familiar voice rang out from the platform speakers. "You're late, and your landing was trash." Kaelen smirked. "Good to see you too, Dad." From the shadows of the blast doors emerged a tall figure clad in a battle-worn exosuit, modified for both utility and comfort. His face, rugged and stern, was carved from years of command: grizzled beard, cold steel gray eyes, and a scar across his temple that matched Kaelen's. Commander Dorian Drax. A relic of every war the galaxy tried to forget. His eyes flicked to Elyndra, who leaned on Kaelen's shoulder, barely standing. Her silver skin reflected the storm light, her breath shallow. "That's not human," Dorian said flatly. "Neither are the things chasing her," Kaelen replied. Dorian gave a grunt. "Then get her inside. Storm's getting worse. And I don't need orbital guests dropping in before dinner." They crossed into the fortress, part bunker, part museum of forgotten tech. Automated defenses clicked to life as Dorian moved, recognizing his biometric signature. Inside, flickering tactical displays lit up a command hub surrounded by crates of antique weapons and prototype shielding tech. Dorian tossed a tattered blanket at Kaelen. She doesn't look combat ready. Kaelen wrapped it around Elyndra and helped her onto a medical bench. She's more useful than you think. Elyndra opened her eyes and met Dorian's gaze. There was no fear in her voice when she spoke. They'll find us soon. The ones who hunt me. Then we better be ready, Dorian said, and turned to Kaelen. Tell me everything. Kaelen did. About the ancient ship. The stasis pod. The hunters. Elyndra's power. And the way she bent space itself. Dorian listened without interruption. When Kaelen finished, he nodded once. All right. I'll help. One last time. They had 6 hours. Storm fronts howled above, masking their thermal signatures. It wouldn't last. Dorian, Kaelen, and Elyndra huddled over a worn hollow map, outlining a perimeter of magnetic traps, plasma turrets, and fallback tunnels. Elyndra, regaining strength, explained the resonance of the storm's magnetic field and how she could anchor it to distort time in localized pulses. A time snare, Dorian said, impressed. You sure you're not a weapon? Elyndra's smile was soft but resolute. I am memory. And I choose what to keep. Preparations flew by in a blur of welders, old drones rebooted, and storm generators overclocked to feed Elyndra's field. Kaelen barely had a moment to breathe, but through it all, he felt something unfamiliar purpose. And then, silence. Not peace. The kind of silence that comes before the sky breaks. Alarms rang as Dorian shouted, inbound ships. 3 signatures. Minimal comms. They are coming in hot. Kaelen strapped on a plasma repeater and took position on the upper ramparts. Elyndra stood in the center of the courtyard, robes fluttering in a storm wind, her arms raised as lines of energy swirled around her. Dorian activated the defense grid from his central console, muttering curses like prayers. The first hunter ship pierced the clouds with a scream of anti-gravity engines. The storm answered with a fork of lightning. Turrets opened fire, lancing blue bolts across the sky. One ship took a hit, spiraling toward the ridge. The others deployed troops, sleek black armored figures that blinked into reality like ghosts. Kaelen fired. Plasma bursts tore through the darkness, meeting shields and scattering sparks. Below, Elyndra stepped forward, her hands weaving through air heavy with static. Time itself rippled as the soldiers neared her. One lunged, then froze mid-air, trapped in a suspended loop, his momentum caught like a thread unraveling in reverse. Dorian's voice came through comms. She's holding them. But not forever. Kaelen, watch her back. Always, he replied. More hunters advanced. Kaelen vaulted over cover, dropping 2 with a scatter burst. Another leapt onto the rampart. Kaelen turned just in time, catching the strike with his forearm and slamming the attacker with the butt of his weapon. The air was thick with smoke, rain, and war. In the courtyard, Elyndra's eyes burned bright violet as the storm itself seemed to slow around her. Bolts of lightning paused mid-flash. The enemy moved as if wading through honey. But it cost her. She collapsed to one knee, trembling. Kaelen raced to her side, shielding her with his body. I can still hold it, she gasped. You don't have to do it alone, Kaelen said, gripping her hand. She looked at him, and this time, the storm was reflected in her eyes not as something she feared, but something she commanded. Behind them, the last hunter ship hovered low, preparing a final strike. Dorian activated the final trap, a cluster of magnetic mines triggered by the ship's energy signature. The sky lit up as the mines detonated, ripping the final ship apart in a bloom of fire and light. The battlefield went still. Rain hissed on scorched metal. Bodies of the fallen shimmered and vanished, retrieved remotely, or erased. From a downed soldier's communicator, a message played. "You cannot run forever. We will reclaim the threads." Kaelen crushed the device under his boot. Elyndra stood, steadier now. "Then we won't run." Dorian approached, armor scorched, face unreadable. "You did good," he said, to both of them. Kaelen smirked. "That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me." "Don't get used to it," Dorian muttered, turning back toward the fortress. And for the first time in his life, Kaelen didn't feel like just a stray pilot with bad luck. He felt like part of something bigger. And Elyndra, no longer just a fugitive, stood with eyes forward. This time, she would fight. Not to escape, but to end it. The storm had finally begun to die. Kaelen Drax sat atop a jagged piece of scorched metal, the remnants of a plasma-blasted turret, watching as the last tendrils of lightning flickered across the bruised sky. The air smelled of wet stone, burnt circuitry, and something quieter like the aftermath of chaos holding its breath. Beside him, Elyndra lowered herself onto the same slab, her movements graceful despite the exhaustion that clung to her. Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the muted light, and strands of her cosmic hair drifted lazily in the breeze, no longer charged with the frantic energy of battle. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Above, the clouds parted just enough to reveal the scattered stars beyond, the same stars Kaelen had spent years drifting beneath, always searching for something he couldn't name. Elyndra's voice broke the silence, soft but steady. "You didn't just save me, Kaelen." He turned his head slightly, catching the reflection of starlight in her violet eyes. "You saw me." Kaelen let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in his chest since the moment he found her in that ancient pod. "Yeah," he said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I guess I did." Elyndra's gaze drifted upward, to the sky that still rumbled with distant thunder. "For so long, I was nothing but a relic, a weapon they wanted to reclaim. Running was survival. Hiding became existence. But now..." Her words faded, but Kaelen understood. He followed her gaze, feeling the weight of it all, the battles, the scars, the endless flight from things bigger and darker than himself. "Now," Kaelen said, his voice firmer, "we stopped running." Elyndra looked at him again, this time with something brighter in her eyes. Hope, not the fragile kind born from desperation, but the steady flame of choice. "There are others," she whispered. "Scattered, forgotten like I was. Threads waiting to be found." Kaelen's smile widened, not with bravado, but with purpose. "Then we find them," he said. "We pull every thread loose until that tapestry they are so desperate to control unravels in their hands." Elyndra reached out, her hand brushing against his, not by accident, but as a silent agreement. They sat there a moment longer, letting the quiet settle around them, not as fugitives, but as something new. Partners in defiance. When they finally rose, The Starhound stood ready on the landing pad, its hull scarred but resilient, much like its pilot. Dorian Drax waited at the base of the ramp, arms crossed, his expression unreadable beneath the weight of a soldier's pride he'd never admit aloud. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice gruff. Kaelen glanced at Elyndra, then back at his father. "Yeah. For once, I am." Dorian gave a single nod, the closest thing to approval Kaelen would ever get. Elyndra offered the old commander a respectful incline of her head. "Thank you for standing with us." "Just keep standing," Dorian replied. "That'll be thanks enough." With that, Kaelen and Elyndra boarded the Starhound. The engines rumbled to life, a familiar hum that felt different now, less like an escape, more like a beginning. As the ship lifted off, Kaelen guided it through the thinning storm clouds, the fortress shrinking beneath them until it was just another mark on a world full of battlefields. Elyndra stood at the viewport, watching as the horizon gave way to the endless expanse of stars. Her reflection in a glass shimmered beside Kaelen's as he joined her. "So," he said, handing her a steaming mug of something that might have passed for coffee. "Any idea where we start?" She took the mug, her fingers brushing his, and allowed herself a small, genuine smile. "There's a place," she said. "In the forgotten sectors, the nexus where lost things tend to gather. Dangerous, uncharted." "Sounds perfect," Kaelen interrupted, his grin returning. The Starhound broke atmosphere, the void welcoming them like an old friend. Ahead, the stars stretched across the black canvas, each one a promise of stories untold. Kaelen settled into the pilot seat, Elyndra beside him, no longer a passenger but a co-navigator of whatever came next. "We're not fugitives anymore," he said quietly. Elyndra nodded, her gaze fixed forward. "No," she agreed. "We're seekers." With a final push, the Starhound surged into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the world of survival and heading toward a destiny they would shape themselves. In the quiet hum of the ship, amidst the swirling stars, Kaelen realized something he never thought he'd feel again. He was home. Not because of a place, but because of the person sitting beside him. And this time, they weren't running. They were chasing freedom.